The Hierophant was my primary card this morning, surrounded by the Five of Wands, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Emperor. It is an interesting combination when you spend your life thinking about people, leadership, and systems. The Hierophant is often associated with tradition, institutions, and the wisdom passed from one generation to another. He carries the accumulated knowledge of those who came before us, the teachings, the rituals, the structures built because someone, somewhere, discovered a way through a problem and left a map behind. There's value in that. Human beings have always depended upon inheritance. We learn language because someone taught us words. We understand our professions because others spent years discovering what works and passing that knowledge forward. Families carry stories. Organizations develop memory. Civilizations preserve ideas across centuries so each generation can begin a little farther down the road. We are all standing somewhere on ground someone else prepared. And yet, eventually, the ground changes. The world changes. The people change. The conditions that made an old solution brilliant begin to shift beneath it. What once created order can become rigid. What once protected people can become a cage. What once represented wisdom can remain in place long after the original purpose has faded from memory. That is where leadership becomes something more than stewardship. The Emperor was sitting beside the Hierophant today, and I found myself thinking about the difference between preserving a structure and being responsible for it. Preservation is relatively simple. You protect what exists. You enforce the rules. You maintain the hierarchy. You keep the machinery running. Responsibility asks more of us. Responsibility requires us to understand the machinery well enough to recognize where it's producing friction, where energy is being lost, where people are carrying burdens the system itself created. It requires us to look beneath the behavior everyone is trying to manage and ask what conditions are producing it. I have spent enough years in business to know how quickly we turn human beings into the explanation. Someone is resistant. Someone lacks accountability. Someone is difficult. Someone needs more training. And sometimes that is true. But sometimes a group of intelligent, capable people are doing exactly what the environment around them has trained them to do. The Five of Wands brings that tension into the reading. It is the collision of competing energies, competing priorities, competing ideas. In business, we often experience it as conflict between departments, personalities, agendas, or leaders. We spend an enormous amount of time and money trying to get people aligned. And sometimes alignment is exactly what is needed. Sometimes, though, that conflict is carrying information. When the same arguments surface year after year, when the same decisions return to the same table, when talented people continue to struggle inside the same boundaries, curiosity becomes one of the most valuable qualities a leader can possess. What is this friction trying to show us? What has changed? What are we still carrying because it once served us well? And what would happen if we stopped asking how to make people fit the system and began asking whether the system still fits the people and the work we are asking them to do? The Wheel of Fortune feels especially important here because every system has a season. There are moments when consistency creates strength. There are moments when tradition provides the stability needed to carry people through uncertainty. There are also moments when the wheel turns and the old maps begin leading us toward a landscape that no longer exists. That does not erase the value of what came before, but it asks us to become worthy of carrying it forward. The affirmation cards in this reading spoke about forgiveness, commitment, personal growth, partners, and miracles. I sat with that for a while because leadership always seems to return to relationships eventually. We build structures because people need to work together. We create rules because groups need shared agreements. We establish institutions because human beings are trying to create something that will outlive a single person. And then, somewhere along the way, the institution itself can become more important than the people it was created to serve. That is the moment I think leaders have to become very quiet and listen. Forgiveness has a place here too. Every generation believes it would have done better with the benefit of hindsight. We can look back at the people who built the system we inherited and see every flaw, every limitation, every place where they failed to imagine what might come next. But they were human beings, standing in their own moment in history, working with the information, beliefs, fears, hopes, and possibilities available to them. We can honor the foundation without living forever inside the floor plan. Maybe that is the inheritance we're actually meant to leave behind. A willingness to receive wisdom without surrendering discernment. A willingness to respect tradition without confusing familiarity with truth. A willingness to create enough structure for people to thrive with enough space for the next generation to see beyond the walls we built. Because one day, every one of us becomes part of someone else's inheritance. The question is not simply what we built. It is whether the people who come after us will find a foundation strong enough to stand on, open enough to grow from, and generous enough to allow them to build something we could not yet imagine. And perhaps that's where the miracle lives. In the moment when we realize that the work was never meant to end with us.